Hello, everyone.
Hello, guys.
Good evening or good morning, depending on where you are. We're glad to welcome you here at our a little bit unusual webinar. It's unusual because we're conducting it right near the mobile farm, which is right to us, and they kind of say informal format that we introduced in the shape of the interview with the two hosts. Me, my name is Slava, and I'm working for Salt. And the main speaker of today's evening, Alex Hursevich, who is to the right of me. He's CEO of Salt and the leading person in R&D for test automation, and for several years developing the mobile farm, movement. And now, please let me a little bit tell you about the format of today's webinar, what to expect from me. So kind of an interview, and you can leave your comment or your question to be answered at the end of this discussion. And yeah, you can see many devices here on the table, which Alex will show you and function how it works. And please let me now give you the floor to Alex Hursevich to start today's discussion. Alex, please.
Hello, guys. Thanks so much, Vyacheslav, for introduction. Yes, I'm CEO of Salt, and at the same time, I'm leading a research and development department of test automation in our company. And I would be glad to share our expertise of building up of in-house mobile device farms. We'll share all the secrets, and we'll also provide you with the direct guide of how to build, how technically set up everything in place in your company, in your office.
Yeah. So, and I guess the first question might be very simple. Who needs mobile farms, Alex?
Yeah. So basically, the question is not so simple, but I'll try to answer. So first of all, to answer this question, we have to identify the right company to start building the mobile device farms in their office. I would say that this approach is applicable for mid-sized businesses and enterprises who has budgets for that. At the same time, I'd say that you have to establish pretty much mature CI/CD process so that you have a huge automation that should be executed on daily basis, on hourly basis. So you're running hundreds of thousands of tests. So let's say if you're a small startup and you're running tens or even up to 100 tests on daily basis, probably the best solution for you will be to use some well-known cloud providers like Sauce Labs or BrotherStack. They do provide really nice service, and it's much more applicable for small companies who does not have so big budgets for building up this kind of farms.
Yeah, I think I got an inquiry for you, Alex. I mean, we don't actually know what the public now joined the discussion during this webinar. I mean, how technical is the public? I mean, or the business oriented or whatever. So I would like to ask you kindly not only to focus on to discuss the technical aspects and details of the process, but also to highlight somehow the value that businesses are getting from this.
Yeah.
And this is I guess this is important for the public who joined. I mean, today or maybe day after that or in the future they will send out the record of this discussion. And now coming to the next question about the peripherals that's used to build the farm. Can you name them somehow?
Yes, for sure. You see a set of devices on my table. Don't worry, I will highlight every single device that you see here during our conversation. But first of all, let's talk about probably the central point, which basically allows to connect a set of devices, multiple devices to the same servers. And I will start my conversation about this small black box called USB Hub. This is a really principal instrument for managing your devices in your device farm. So this is pluggable vendors that is used for connecting up to 7 devices to our Ubuntu and macOS servers. they do provide really stable connection, both the data transfer bus and the charge supply chain, so that you'll be able to connect up to 7 devices, both mobile devices and tablets, to your servers and provide them for automation purposes. And at the same time, it's really vitally important to use the original cables for connecting your devices. Especially, it's applicable for IS connection, as far as microcontrollers are injected in these small cables. And if you are going to maintain your automation farm on the long distance, you should use the original cables.
That's why it's so important to use the original cables. I mean, it influence somehow the quality of connection and the quality of tests afterwards, or what? I mean, what do you?
Yeah, so it's basically affects two aspects. The first one is data transfer. In some cases, some specific vendors, I mean, the mobile devices are not compliant with some of the data cables. And at the same time, I mean, it's mostly dedicated to IIS. Your battery may degrade much more faster if you're using not original cables.
But it's much more expensive, right?
I would say that in comparison with all the other companies, it's not a great, it's not a big price, you know.
I see.
Yeah, but it's important.
Yeah, if we look to the right, I mean, we can see many, say, hundreds of devices here in this place. And generally, how many devices you can connect to this mobile farm?
Great question. I'd like to divide it into two parts. First of all, let's talk about the Android connection. Later on, I'll speak about the configuration of the Ubuntu server, but in general, we are connecting up to 4 USB hubs to the same Ubuntu server. So as a result, we are capable to support up to 28 or 32 devices per one server. Some of them are connected to the USB hubs, and some of them are directly connected to the server. And this is pretty much mature and stable configuration. If we are talking about the macOS and iOS device connection, we are mostly using Mac Minis, and in some cases, it's used in combination with USB hub, so that we are capable to connect up to 7 devices. But from our expertise, the most stable set for macOS, Mac Mini, with mid-level hardware config is up to 4 or 5 iOS devices per Mac Mini.
That's interesting. I mean, and how do you select those devices that we can see here on the mobile farm? I mean, there are lots of, but still, I mean, there are some limitations, or some lower border, upper border. I mean, how old the devices could be, and how do you select? How do you manage the process of selecting this?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, it's really important to take into account the business side, or while you're building the mobile device farm. So what we do first, we do analyze our customers. So when we get some metrics from statistics tools like Amplitude or Google Analytics, we're capable to get the idea what are the core devices, what are the top used devices. And using this list, we select the most popular. Also, it's important to analyze some feedback from the Google, from some technical forums about the stability of these devices, because some Chinese providers like Xiaomi or some others are not so easily for automation. So in this case, I would say it's a combination of both. The business side, when you analyze your customer statistics, and the aspects of your technical aspects, when you analyze some forums and you get the idea, is it quite stable enough for your daily automation routines?
But I mean, really stepping back a little bit, I mean, how many years you developed this mobile farm? Because I suppose that you're the person who basically started and controlled all the process. And how do you feel? How many years? What is the experience? And generally talking about the mobile farm and the devices, how old are the devices? What is the lawyer say border of this?
Yeah, so as I said, in general, I have about 8 years of expertise in test automation from the very first generations of Selenium. I've been working with, first of all, web automation tasks, and later on I've switched to the mobile routines. So I would say it's about, let's say, 5 or 4 years when we have much or less stable APM releases for mobile automation.
Mhm.
And yeah, pretty. The first setups were hosted in my private flat, and later on it was migrated to the office or to some data centers. So yeah, this is the history of 5 years expertise.
Yeah, nice. But if you look directly to the devices that are placed here on the shelves, what is, I mean, can you name the oldest one, for example, somehow pointed out, and the newest? And I mean, I guess it's quite interesting for the viewers.
Yes, so probably what I see here, we at least have Samsung Galaxy S4 or S5. Basically, it's pretty much outdated, but still it depends on the customer. In some regions, they are still popular, these devices, and we're trying to support the most principal devices for every particular of our customers. But at the same time, we have all the, high-end devices like iPhone 11 Pro, etc., etc. So this is really a big difference between Samsung S4 and iPhone 11 Pro.
Oh, so iPhone 11 is laying somewhere on the shelf, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Interesting.
Something like there.
Good. And talking about the advantages and disadvantages comparing to the, say, cloud solutions, the known solutions like BrowserStack and Sauce Labs, what could you name among the advantages here?
Yes, so as I mentioned before, basically this is a question of budgets, right? So first of all, when we speak about small amount of tests, it's essential, it's reasonable to use cloud providers because they do provide really huge metrics of different devices, of different operation systems, etc., etc. But when we speak about huge amount of tests on daily basis, I mean hundreds of thousands, and you do need the huge capacity. There's a lot of multiple threads at the same time. In some cases, cloud providers is highly expensive. It's highly expensive.
Yeah.
So if you speak about the BrowserStack or Sauce Labs, you are committing to appropriate amount of threads that you will be built on monthly basis, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say you have 10 threads and you have a regression run, you have to, run hundreds or thousands of tests in small amount of time. And this capacity is not enough for your needs. In some cases, you are still need to stay in queues waiting for the devices. This is the first aspect. So when we speak about huge scale of tests, private device farms, even when you invest quite huge amount of money at the very first stage, it's really worth it because you understand the reduce of expenses later on. The second aspect is security. Security, which is very important, let's say, for fintech and banking startups or businesses. So not every of these businesses are ready to run their tests, to test new features in some public clouds. So this is the reason why they build these private hosted device farms in their VPC or VPN. So, and probably the last but not the least, this is kind of, debugging purposes and test maintenance. So in some cases, test automation engineers spend quite a lot of time adopting the tests for the full range of devices that you have in your cloud. So, and in some cases, it's not so straightforward to adopt the test from Samsung S8 and make sure that it will be executed in LG G3 or something like that in the same manner, because there are quite a lot of vendor-specific and platform-specific features that should be debugged and should be adopted. And when we speak about the hosted device farms, engineer is capable to connect to this device, adopt the test, and then execute on the full range. Okay, I see one question from the chat. Farm walk through, please. So are you asking to just review what we have here in the shelf? If that's correct, let me do it in the very end because it's technically a bit difficult to just get the camera to another place. Okay,
we will do this for sure. And so let's have a little bit of rest regarding these technical issues and coming into the question of money. Alex, are you able to talk about money?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, since you are taking care of the mobile farm for many years already, you definitely should know how much does it cost to maintain all this park of the devices. Plus, I would like to know, I mean, how much does it cost to buy all these devices, which we can see here on the right on the shelves?
Okay, so let's go through this question. So first of all, if we're speaking about the price of this, on-premise device farms, it really depends on the set of devices that you're interested in. It depends on the amount of devices and the level of devices because, the price between the low-end devices and high-end devices may be dramatically different. Let's say $200 for just a general Samsung and, 1,500 for top iPhone. So this is the main difference between different setups. Yeah. At the same time, let's say about the components. So basically the core components are pretty much not so expensive, but still if you would like to host at least 50 devices or 30 devices, it's let's say one Ubuntu server and multiple Mac Minis. But
how many is enough? I mean, according to your opinion and your experience, what is the average quantity of the devices that you should have in the mobile phone?
So in general, we have at least 50 devices per customer. So, and in general, it's about 70% of Android and 30% of iOS as far as the Android fragmentation is much higher. I mean, in the aspect of iOS versions and form factors and different vendors, while the iPhone is little bit more straightforward in this case. But yeah, in general, it's 50 devices per customer. If we speak about the maintenance costs, so what you should bear in mind, first of all, it's electricity checks. The second one, it's support for the security guard. So you have to make sure that the access to the shelf is controlled on a daily basis, 24/7. And also you have bear in mind that you will spend some money for, repair services. We'll speak about, battery changes, etc. later on, but this is still a source of expenses.
But then please explain what is the major cost in this. I mean, you mentioned that you have to calculate additionally that electricity cost. I mean, if you have a big office like here in Solvd, and many computers are connected somehow to electricity, does it really add a lot of, say, electricity value plus to the thing that we do? I mean, how much of electricity does the farm consume? So can you assume it somehow?
I could not say the direct numbers right now, but I would say that it will increase your checks for about 20-25% more.
Oh, just this farm, this
shelf. Hundreds of devices, something like that. If we speak about the average office of 500 square meters.
Yeah. Now, I mean, let's switch into not that much pleasant topic of the problems and issues that the customer can face if he decides or she decides to build a mobile farm. What can you tell us about the issues that you faced during the exploitation?
Yes, so first of all, I'd like to mention probably some failures from our own expertise. And first of all, probably this is the selection of peripherals, the selection of access points, etc., etc. And we did a lot of failures. We tested a lot of hypotheses and we tested a lot of hardware. And as a result, we, selected the appropriate set of, server components, access points, etc. And we do provide this information publicly. this is not big secret, and we are willing to share this information, because I would say that nowadays it's really important to collaborate with businesses and share your expertise. It's worth it for sure.
Yeah,
at the same time, huge problems. There are some problematic devices. As I've said, when you analyze a set of devices that basically faces your customer needs, you still buy some devices, not tested devices, probably some problems with motherboards or with the batteries, etc., or even some devices are not so easy for automation purposes. As I said, some Chinese devices, Xiaomi's, are really a nightmare for the automation engineers. So probably this is additional topic to discuss. I will not, deep dive into this topic right now. But overall, when you have all this, 5 years of expertise and you can provide this end-to-end solution, we understand that our experience, we understand that our spend for this build up is worth it right now.
Yeah.
We are capable to provide these farms for our customers to, to help to succeed in their fields, in their businesses, to provide the high quality of their product releases.
Thanks. And what about the internet connections? I mean, if we look at the shelves, we can see at least like 100 devices, and how to make the Wi-Fi connection or internet connection stable for all these multiple devices we can see.
Yeah, so great question. And basically, to answer this question, I just prepared this kind of sample. This is Ubiquiti UniFi Pro version. So this device is used for huge rooms, for hotels, for restaurants, and they are capable to to support huge load. So, and one of interesting topics to discuss is that their firmware, their software that they provide from out of the box, they do provide the ability to connect multiple access points to the same cluster, so that they are capable to balance all the workloads. So, and let's say if we are speaking about the general device shelf, and we have 50, 60, or even more devices, we are striving to connect at least 2 access points to balance the workload on every single of these access points. As a result, we have really cool, really stable Wi-Fi connection, and we are able to test, hundreds, thousands of tests on daily basis without any problems of internet connection.
So, I mean, what is not less important here in this regard is the security reasons. I mean, can you tell us a little bit more about how to store the devices, how to ensure the security in there? Because, I mean, for the majority of the clients, it might be really important.
Yes, for sure. And let's start with, first of all, with security and aspect of access. As I've said, we do have, for every single shelf, we do have appropriate camera that basically is concentrated on the shelf, and
so
security,
you got one somewhere
yeah, that's correct. And special security guard is looking for it on daily basis, 24/7, controlling the access and making sure that nobody is just taking the device and to get on it back. The second aspect is electricity security. So for this aspect, we are using UPCs, so that basically controls the voltage. This case. At the same time, we are using metal shelves for hosting our devices, and it's really vitally important to ground all these metal shelves. And the last but not the least is the fire prevention aspects. So for these purposes, we are still using these metal shelves, which I hope will prevent from the fire spread. I would say that we did not have any kind of accidents, but still it's worth it to make sure that you have the prevention aspects. And at the same time, I'd like to mention these small sensors that are basically available for everybody. So they are the components of Xiaomi smart home. So this small one is the temperature sensor. So basically this temperature sensor just controls the average temperature in the shelf, making sure that we have don't have any problem situations when we have really high temperature.
And you have to place it. I'm sorry, you have to place it inside of the shelf,
Yeah,
right? And somewhere that
directly just in the center of the shelf, making sure that it's displays the correct temperature, adequate temperature of your current situation in the shelf.
So you mentioned adequate temperature. What would you name the adequate temperature? I mean, what is the border you have to worry about?
So basically, I can say the direct number right now, I would say is about 24, 25 degrees above zero in Celsius. And at the same time, we are setting up some thresholds that will add additional 2 or 3 degrees. And if it's the temperature is higher, it will send the signal to the central hub of Xiaomi Smart Hub. And as a result, you get the notification to your mobile device. At the same time, it have an internal speaker that will identify the problem and will notify everybody in the office that something goes wrong. Yeah, and the second sensor that we are also setting in the shelves, it's a smoke sensor. So that sensor just identifies any evidence of smoke in the shelf. So additional sensor that is connected to the smart hub, and if we have any accidents, it will immediately update us by smartphone push notifications and by the sound from the speaker.
And what happens then if the signal received and you see that something problem occurred?
Yeah, so we do have provided the instructions for our security, how to work in these situations. First of all, we have these kind of electricity switches outside this room. At the same time, we have all these kinds of instructions how to work in this case, all the fire prevention circumstances, etc.
Can you basically memorize some negative cases that you remember that happened? I mean, you said 8 years or something, and did something happen that you memorized and you remember you can share with our viewers about the mobile phone?
Yeah, for sure. Probably I would share my own expertise. It was, let's say, 5 or 6 years when I started to build up these device farms in my own flat. Trying this or that configuration, I just buy some simple server connected for Android devices, and over the 3 or 4 years, I understood that there was some degradation in the battery. So the form has changed, and I've decided just to pick this battery out. And someone just recommended me, okay, get the needle and pierce this battery. As a result, it was a huge chemical, physical reaction, and it was really a great chance just to get the fire on my balcony. But fortunately, I managed to stop all this all this fire. So I would recommend, if you have any signs of battery degradation, any signs of changing the battery shape, just make sure that you are moving this device to a repair service, or you just getting this battery and get this battery to some utilization servers.
Yeah. So I think that the time that simplified question has ended. Now we're coming a bit back to the technical issues, and we'll talk a little bit about the configuration of the server, because we know that all these multiple devices is not enough. I mean, we need to get the server and the connection and the automation in order to make this all run. I mean, can you describe a little bit about the configuration of the server needed?
Yeah, sure. So, okay, if I share my screen right now.
Yeah, please.
So, looks like you see my presentation right now. I've prepared a few slides for that purposes. And first of all, I'd like to split the answer into 2 parts, as usual. The first one, let's speak about the Android configuration and server for this setup. So, as I've mentioned before, we have to support up to 30 devices on the same Ubuntu server. And for that purposes, we are using Xeon-based configuration. So we are using the motherboard that is based on LGA 2011 socket. And at the same time, we are using Xeon processor with up to 10 cores and up to 20 threads. So it's essential to use solid-state drive as far as the viability of read and write operations in your automation infrastructure, capturing the logs, screenshots, etc. It requires really huge and quick throughput of your solid-state drive. And at the same time, we are using at least 16 gigabytes of RAM, and ideally 32 gigabytes to operate smoothly with all these 30 devices in one place. What also, yes, let me return back to the slide. You can see here just a sample prices for these components. Motherboard is 300, processor 600, and 300 for solid state drive, and about $200 for the memory. Also, I'd like to mention a few words about the power supply. We're using Corsair power supply, and it's about 500 of watts, and it's pretty much enough for this configuration that I've specified before. And also, it's essential to say about this kind of PCI USB 3.0 card. Using this card, we are connecting all our USB hubs that basically connects additional 7 devices. So this card provides really cool driver support, and there is no any problem with connecting this huge amount of peripherals to the same server. So the reference to all these components I will leave as a follow-up to this webinar. So you'll be able to find all these components in Amazon or any retail that you're using to get this hardware. And just to finalize my answer, I'd like to say a few words about the macOS configuration. And as I've mentioned before, we are mostly using Mac Minis. So yeah, we are mostly using Mac Minis, and here you can see the differences in price. So in general, we are using a mid-level setup of Mac Mini with i5 core, with with solid-state drive and at least 16 gigabytes of RAM. In comparison with Mac Pro that costs up to 4,000, we don't have such huge increase in performance here. Yeah, we get much better CPU, but all the rest are pretty much the same. So from our expertise, the pretty good combination of the price and performance is dedicated to Mac Mini, and we're connecting up to 5 iOS devices to the same server.
You know what? I mean, it's very good that you somehow indicated the prices, the overall price of the equipment you have, and you name the providers and so on. But my question is, I mean, is it possible to replace those devices by some analogical ones with the same or close prices? And could we somehow advice to the people who want to build the mobile phone with the different devices of the same functionality, let's say so?
Yeah, so good question. So that I would say that the technology is going forward, and we get new CPUs, we get new motherboards, and yes, it's important to to be updated. So in this case, I would recommend you to connect our support channel. So I will provide this link to the channel as well as a follow-up. And we'll consult you of what hardware components should be used, which of them are tested, so that, as I said from our previous conversation, we had really huge expertise and a lot of experiments, so that we can, recommend you something, what vendors to use, what not to use. So, yeah. I mean that we can use some different components, but it should be tested.
Now coming to the XS, I mean, is the remote XS to all these devices possible? And if so, then who could benefit in the team from it?
Yeah, so basically, for automation and manual QA purposes, we do provide this kind of remote access application. This application is based on open source solution called OpenSTF. So basically, this is a web application that connects all the remote mobile devices, and you are capable to interact with them as usual, like swiping, clicking, inputting some text, installing the applications. So it's vitally important both for automation and manual QA purposes. While automation is using this approach for debugging, for adopting the tests, for the full range of the devices, while for manual QA, they can reuse all this capacity for their manual verifications. So yeah, this is cool feature that we are supporting, and I would like to mention that all this functionality both for Android and iOS are in open source, and we do provide the steps how to configure everything on your side.
Now coming to, say, Kubernetes, which is pretty hype all the last times, like, can we migrate somehow the mobile automation to the cloud running Kubernetes, Alex?
Yes, though we do understand that there is very huge adaptation of Docker technology, of Kubernetes nowadays. A lot of enterprises, a lot of companies are migrating their microservices, their workforce into these clouds, and we do the same. So we do provide ability to test web applications and mobile Android applications in cloud. So we're capable to run every single test session, mobile and web, in a separate container, in a separate Kubernetes pod in the Amazon cloud or in Azure cloud or Google cloud. Execute this test, and right after the test is finished, the pod is killed and you do not utilize, additional resources. Everything is automatically scaled and downscaled appropriate to your, workload needs. And we do provide a SaaS solution, which is called ZipRunner, that is capable to support all these demands.
And so, last but not least, when you talk about test automation and generally about the QA, that an important question arises about the reporting tools and reporting channels about this all. Can you please tell a few words about the reporting about this whole topic we are discussing?
Yes, so throughout our history, we implemented appropriate tool set for automation purposes. And for reporting, especially, we are using our open source and still developed by our team tool called ZipRunner. So ZipRunner Insights provides you with first-class reporting instruments that basically tracks all your automation in real time, provides you video sessions, logs, screenshots, provides you ownership of every single test case, and increases the transparency of test automation by dashboards and widgets. So I will be glad to share this expertise in a separate conversation, in a separate webinar, if some of you guys will be interested. So yeah, it's called ZipRunner.
Interesting. There are lots and tons of interesting information we consumed so far. I would propose you, Alex, to stop here and try to answer questions if we have some.
Yes,
could
sure.
We check?
Yes, for sure. I have a couple of questions in the chat. I'll do my best to answer some of them. So, okay. How you're using PPS Infra or test runs via Appium or any other automation tools using in D&D executions? So, yeah, basically for mobile test automation, we are only concentrated on Appium as automation tool. So we think this is the best tool for automation engineers as far as it utilizes well-known WebDriver interface, and you're capable to run or to implement the web tests and mobile tests in the same manner. I do understand that we have Espresso or some different additional tool sets that are more native-like test implementation, but this kind of engagement level and the differences between the WebDriver interface and these specific tools is not applicable for us. So in general, we are using Appium as a core automation tool. So the second question, are these any tasks happening in Galaxy Fold or Motorola Flip Phone? If yes, any issues faced while running automation? I'm sorry, but as of now, we did not run any tests on these specific devices. So this is really good question because it's specific form factor. So in this form factor, it was something identical to what we have, let's say, in when the iPhone X was released, because it was a little bit specific form factor of the device display, and we have, to buy this device as soon as possible, to adopt the tests and verifications. That's really a good question. Unfortunately, our customers did not require the support of these specific devices, but I hope we will do support. We will do test some scenarios on these devices in the near future. I hope there are some specific problems here. Sure.
What are the specifics of this device? You mentioned the form factor is a little bit different from the ones. And can you describe what is probably because?
Yeah, probably, guys. All of you know what kind of devices it is. It's kind of book that is you open and you get this huge display with this kind of like rectangle ratio of your the dimensions. So for sure the layout will be crazy for the Android developers and crazy for testers as well. So I hope that here you can catch a lot of specific issues, but still this is device, I will say this device for the geeks. So it's not so popular so far. So as of now, we did not test anything on this device.
No, I think I would like to own one. I mean, it's a book-like, you can put it in your pocket and then in your home on the sofa, open and see some movies. But I guess it's quite expensive so far.
Yeah. Okay, so let's try to find out the next one. We have a few minutes left. So do you guys have some sort of dashboard to check device status on each device connected to see if it's offline, off, or not responding? Yes, thanks for the question. So we do have this kind of dashboard. So basically this functionality is covered by this kind of remote access tool called OpenSTF. This dashboard provides information about the connection status, about the battery level, about the battery health also. So we do use this tool for managing the connection status. Okay, so a question from Maxim. Are you going to implement Android emulators in the future and fix iOS simulators? Not sure that I understand what is the problem with iOS simulators as so far, but Android emulators are supported for now. As I've said, we are migrating our automation routines into Kubernetes Cloud so that every single Android emulator is represented by a separate Kubernetes pod, and every single test is executed in a separate thread in a separate pod, and right after we just kill this container, this pod, and do not utilize any additional resources.
So Alex, I think since we are like short in time, I would stop here. What the only thing I would add is that the aim of this webinar is not to teach you absolutely how to build a farm. And this is what we can do afterwards to follow up with the mails and to send you out the, say, step-by-step instruction how to build it, or otherwise you can address us. And today is kind of a trigger to interest to show you how the mobile farm could be looking like and what does it take to maintain and what kind of devices are here. And yes, I would like to thank you, Alex, very much for the input, and we really consumed tons of good information today.
Thanks a lot, guys.